Dear brothers and sisters, Jesus and his followers were admiring the temple, perhaps looking at it from the Mount of Olives across the Kedron Valley, and they were obviously impressed by its magnificence and its beauty, as we might admire a great basilica in Rome. But for Jesus and his Jewish followers, the temple in Jerusalem was much more significant than that. It was the one and only place where sacrifices might be offered to God. It was a representation of the whole universe in microcosm. In fact, they saw it as the centre of the created universe. It was the one place where God, who ruled the whole of creation from beyond the vault of the heavens, dwelt with mankind. Jesus and his followers had been to the temple every year for the great Jewish feasts. Jesus loved the temple, his Father's house, and his anger flared out at those who had made it a place of commerce. And yet, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us, on the threshold of his passion, Jesus announced the coming destruction of this splendid building. By doing so, he announced a sign of the last days, which were to begin with his own Passover. Jesus told them, all these things you are staring at now, the time will come when not a single stone will be left on another. Everything will be destroyed. By dying on the cross for our salvation and by rising from the dead, that we might have the hope of heaven, Jesus would instigate a new age, the age we live in now, the last days of this world, which will usher in the eternal reign of Jesus, King of the universe. Brothers and sisters, we are living now in the end times. How this prophecy must have shocked his hearers. Jesus went on to prophesy what would happen to them before the destruction of the temple. He predicted wars and plagues and famines and natural disasters. He told his followers that they would be persecuted and imprisoned and put on trial for their loyalty to him and his gospel. Of course, they wanted to know when all this would take place, but Jesus told them, all he told them was take care not to be deceived. In other words, don't get spooked by false prophets predicting all sorts of things. And man, haven't we seen a few of those around in our own day? Stand steadfast, he said, in the face of tribulation and trial. God would be with them. Jesus himself would give them the grace to bear witnesses to the truth, to bear witness to the truth with an eloquence and a wisdom that none of their opponents would be able to resist or contradict. And let us remember that all these things that Jesus predicted came to pass. The temple in Jerusalem was totally destroyed by a Roman army in 70 AD during a tragic war that claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of Jews. By that time also, most of the apostles and thousands of other Christians had been martyred, bearing a most eloquent witness to Christ. But dear brothers and sisters, we need to see something more in this word from our Lord Jesus today. Because his word's not just for his followers 2,000 years ago. He is speaking important truths to us now. We must remember that the world we live in and all the things in it will come to an end. On that day of days, the last day before we all enter into timelessness, we will see Jesus. He will come in glory, establishing fully and eternally his reign, his kingdom of universal peace, goodness and love. In the meantime, we are in a battle, Our lives, like those of Jesus and his first followers, are part of the epic struggle between good and evil. Again, the Catechism tells us that before Christ's second coming, the Church must pass through a final trial that will shake the faith of many believers. The persecution that accompanies her pilgrimage on earth will unveil the mystery of iniquity in the form of a religious deception, offering men an apparent solution to their problems at the price of apostasy from the truth. The Catechism goes on to say, the Church will enter the glory of the kingdom only through this final Passover, and she will follow her Lord in his death and resurrection. The kingdom will be fulfilled then, not by a historic triumph of the Church through progressive ascendancy, but only by God's victory over the final unleashing of evil, which will cause his bride to come down from heaven. God's triumph over the revolt of evil will take the form of the last judgment after the final cosmic upheaval of this passing world. That's in the Catechism, sections 675 and 677. I read recently a story of a monastery where a great theologian lived, and one lunchtime he met a monastery gardener who was reading the Bible, and the theologian asked him what book he was reading, and the gardener said, Revelation. That's a very complicated book, said the theologian. It's very hard to interpret. Wouldn't you be better reading something simpler? Well, said the gardener, I just want to know who wins. I'm with the gardener. In this struggle against evil, I need to see how it will end. I love to read chapter 21 of Revelation about the new and eternal Jerusalem, the city of God coming down out of heaven, where the streets shine with the glory of the Lamb, and where there will be no more tears or mourning, and death itself would have passed away, because Jesus, who is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of all history, will have made all things new. In our first reading, the prophet Malachi sees the same day of the Lord as a time of great radiant light. That light will burn up the evildoers like stubble, but for those who fear the name of the Lord, the same light will bring healing and peace. In other words, the beatific vision of Jesus in his second coming will be like the light of the dawn. Out of the greyness of the sad world, true colours of things will appear. Everything will become clearer. Those who have put their lives under God's hand and prayed constantly for the coming of his kingdom will rejoice at the light of his face shining on them. Those who have turned their backs on Jesus and set their hearts on going their own way will be filled with fear. Dear brothers and sisters, let us take heart today and be encouraged, because Jesus has won the ultimate battle between good and evil. On the cross, he conquered sin and death for us. Let us thank him with all our hearts and recommit our lives to him. Let us decide again today to make love of Jesus and love of our neighbour the first thing in our lives. Because the day will come for us all, sooner or later, when that will be the only thing that's important. It won't matter whether that day comes because the world ended or because we died. That will still be the only thing that's important. We will see Jesus, and the only thing that really will matter is, are we committed ourselves to him? Let's rejoice today that when the end of the world comes and we see Jesus face to face, we will rise with glory with him in a resurrection like him. So let us hold firm no matter what trials come our way. And let us keep putting our trust only in Jesus Christ. He is our only hope.